Hey everybody, it's Dr. Nick here. I just finished recording another episode of The Hospitality Spirit. My guest today was Zoltan Pyerly. Zoltan is a native Chicagoan that grew up in the northwest suburbs of Chicago. He started his hospitality career right out of high school with the Hilton family of hotels. Over the next 15 years, Zoltan worked for Hilton brands like Hampton Inn, Hilton, Waldorf Astoria, and Conrad Hotels, which took him across the country from Chicago to Orlando, Scottsdale, and Palm Springs. In March 2020, Zoltan made the leap of faith and went to Nobu Hotel Chicago as its opening hotel manager and opened the property in July of 2020. Just a few months after, he was promoted to general manager. Zoltan graduated from Roosevelt University with a Bachelor's of Science in Hospitality and Tourism Management. I really enjoyed my conversation with Zoltan, and I hope you do too.
And I can't give the better no TIP, but like him, I got dreams and they B.I.G. Try to be a better guy.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's Dr. Nick here with another exciting episode of the Hospitality Spirit podcast. My guest today is Zoltan Pyerly. Zoltan, thanks for being on the Hospitality Spirit today.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Nick. Glad to be here.
There's so much we can talk about today. We have so much in common. We both started our lodging careers with Hilton, but on the Hospitality Spirit, we like to start with the present and then work our way backwards and see where it takes us. So
All right.
Why don't you give us a little bit of idea for those that aren't familiar with Nobu or Nobu Hotel, what it is, and generally speaking, what your role as a GM is.
That's great. Yeah, thank you. Listen, Nobu, a lot of people associate Nobu from a lot of the hip hop songs that are out there in the world right now. A lot of rap artists, hip hop artists like to kind of sing about it, Kanye being one of them and all of them too. It's definitely a name that blew up big time with a lot of the kind of TV personalities like the Kardashians dining at, the Nobu restaurant, maybe in Malibu or in LA or Las Vegas and all that too. So the history with the Nobu really goes back to this celebrity chef, Nobu Matsuhisa, who opened up his restaurant in Beverly Hills. And that's where he ended up connecting with Robert De Niro and Hollywood producer Mayor Tepper. And they really started this big chain together. And they opened up the first Nobu restaurant out in Manhattan. And then it just took off by storm. There's now over 40 restaurants, Nobu restaurants in the world, in very premier locations. And then what they were noticing from the hotel perspective is a lot of hotels around the world were asking to put a Nobu in their hotels. So then, Mayor, De Niro, Nobu-san, they got together and said, well, if they're asking us to put our restaurants and hotels, how about we just open up some hotels? And that's kind of how the hotel kind of concept started too. And now we're very fortunate. There's over 12 hotels worldwide, 5 in the country, the United States, us, it's the Chicago property being the 5th one. And this one actually is a special one because this is the first one in the country built from the ground up. The other 4 are either conversions or they're inside towers of existing properties. For instance, the Nobu Caesar's Palace, inside is inside what was the old Centurion Tower at Caesar's Palace. So this is a really exciting project because it's definitely at a perfect time in the city of Chicago with the West Loop neighborhood developing and growing, and this now being a part of it and hosting now many people wanting to come to the West Loop to dine and experience the Midwest hospitality. So for me, it's been a great ride because I got to be here before we opened. I was hard hatting it with the construction side and overseeing a lot of the implementation of what we're putting in the rooms and the products and all that as well. So it was really a great experience for me to open the property, especially here in my home city, and kind of help grow this neighborhood as well. So it's been fun ride, especially during this last very interesting year for many of us in the hospitality world. But definitely a lot of lessons learned at the same time.
I mean, the West Loop, for those that really aren't familiar with the West Loop of Chicago, I mean, this is one of there are 77 neighborhoods in Chicago. This is the one, though, that is really seeing tremendous growth. A lot of growth in terms of companies coming there. This is a neighborhood where a lot of the celebrity chefs and high-end restaurants are located. We're seeing hotels pop up like yours. Tech companies are coming in. Apartment buildings are going up. I mean, this is a hot neighborhood to be a part of. So I was so excited when they announced the opening of this hotel, and now to see it opening really as almost a flagship property, if you will, there in the West Loop is really it's amazing to see. So congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been really, it's quite an honor, and everyone, I will say, what we love about Chicago and our neighbors here in the West Loop too is everyone's been so gracious, and it's really been kind of a nice glue to kind of get this neighborhood up and running again. Obviously, in lieu of the pandemic from last year, so it's been great.
So in terms of your role as a GM, I mean, I don't like to throw around titles and say, a person with this title is always going to do this, because, a hotel manager at the Nobu and a hotel manager at the Bellagio in Las Vegas might have very different responsibilities. But in terms of your role as GM, what does that mean for someone that maybe isn't as familiar with what that means?
No, that's a really good question, and it's actually pretty important to hit as well because of all the different varieties that there are out there. For this specific property, I'm actually very fortunate. This is my first time being a general manager, and I'm very fortunate to have a great career and I know with around the country and get a lot of experience and exposure, and worked for some small properties and some rather large ones as well. This property, being as small as it is and intimate as it is and as boutique as it is, has definitely been a great first general manager job for myself. Now, this specific property too, we are split up into pretty much two separate entities. We have the Nobu hospitality side, which is what I represent, which is all the hotel, the front office, the housekeeping, engineering, security, valet, like all that, is what we do. Just sales team, all that. And then we have Nobu Restaurant Group. Nobu Restaurant Group, that's they're the ones that started the whole Nobu name in the first place, and they're the ones that oversee my entire food and beverage concepts here, from the rooftop bar at the top of the hotel to the Nobu restaurant located on the first floor, in-room dining, banquets. So for me, being in a rooms background, I grew up in the business with rooms, with front office, housekeeping, etc., with really minimal exposure to food and beverage, this is a really good exposure for me as a general manager to dip in now to some more food and beverage aspects, where I meet with the director of food and beverage on behalf of the Nobu Restaurant Group, and we review a lot of what they do, and have influence. And it's good kind of learning lessons for me too. So it's been fun to kind of take my experience and help the Nobu hospitality side and the hotel side at an intimate setting, but also for me to learn the restaurant side and the food and beverage side along with the great restaurant group that they are.
It's interesting. So I'm hearing you describe that and hear you talking about that. I almost want to go back and dust off my old P&Ls and balance sheets and my old textbooks from hotel school. And because there was always this idea of almost like a 70-30, 60-40 split between where the revenue's coming in, about the vast majority of the revenue in a full service hotel is going to come from rooms. But you also have an incredibly high profile, high visibility food and beverage concept with it. Is that ratio almost kind of similar, or do some of the same practices of balancing out revenues, are they similar at your property because of that unique relationship?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It really depends on how you want to look at it. Do you want to look at it by average check or by person? And then that's how we kind of look and break it down into as well. For us, in the hotel world, it is still a bit seasonal in Chicago. As Q1 is, it's 10 degrees outside, not too much travel and everything. Everyone's kind of keeping warm or going down to warmer weather. So naturally, we have a bit more flexibility where we can, flex the rates or reduce expenses and all that, where the restaurant side, they're pretty much going to be pretty consistent across the board. They might not get the floods of people like the rooftop bars and they get in the summertime, but at least from a Nobu restaurant perspective, they're still going to be able to keep a consistent business. And yes, I mean, there are definitely premier pricing and rates, and definitely high quality items that they provide. But from a hotel side too, our room product, we do carry a very, premier and an exceptional rate as well, because that's kind of the experience that our those guests are kind of looking for. We look at it in a way where if a guest is going to spend that much money for dinner, then most likely you want to do the same thing while sleeping in a bed or using a restroom or having privacy and all that too. So we kind of had to compensate that with our expenses with the amenities and and the services that we want to provide. And so it's an interesting to look at that type of ratio, because right now, because we're so new, and especially open up during the pandemic, where it's been kind of a constant, almost like a soft rollout, because we weren't no one really knew how to forecast this year because of what happened. It's kind of still up in the air right now. We've had, I think both parties have had some pretty strong months, all things considering. We were all thinking it was going to be worse than what it maybe has been. So we're fortunate on that front, but we haven't had kind of the opportunity to kind of really get that solidified percentage breakdown yet.
Yeah, and it's really nice to see. I mean, a couple of things. One, it's nice to see that at least here in Chicago, I mean, you and I were very fortunate enough to go to one of the first kind of industry face-to-face events recently. And it's nice to see this hospitality engine really starting to rev back up, particularly for the city of Chicago, but worldwide. I think also you're probably very fortunate in terms of where your location is. I mean, you're in a location that is absolutely ideal, that because it's such an up and coming and it's such a popular area, lots of restaurants, lots of dining, the retail scene is actually starting to get enhanced quite a lot. I mean, just that location alone is probably one of the things that's helping you significantly. So, I mean, you really are almost in a perfect spot to have this business up and running.
To say the least, yeah. And one of my favorite things to do is every now and then, even if I go down the street a couple of blocks to pick up maybe a light lunch or something like that, I try to purposely alternate, where I go get maybe a lunch or stop by and visit some of the stores, and to your point, the retail shops that have been popping up a bit more. Our goal here too is really to spread that hospitality around. And it's so comforting to talk to the other managers, either general managers of the restaurants, the bars, or the retail shops. And they're thanking us because they know our guests are going to, give them the business as well. So it just shows you that you put a great product in such a premier location that the ripple effect goes out in such a positive way. And that's our goal. What we want to do is really kind of give back to the community, that this is a beautiful hotel that is deserved. They're very deserving to be in the West Loop. We're a part of the West Loop Chamber. We want to be a part of the community events and all that fun stuff. So it's really kind of fun to see this all kind of come to fruition during a very trying year. And it just shows you that kind of classic Midwest hospitality that we can provide, and with the great resources that we have.
Exactly. I mean, just the podcast alone is a perfect example of kind of that West Loop hospitality. I mean, you got JP Graziano right across the street. You got the Haymarket guys down the street. I mean, all former guests on the podcast, and they all speak about this West Loop community that is just so strong. And as somebody like you that has studied hospitality, worked in hospitality and tourism has been a part of my life, it's great to see. And I think it's one of the things that makes this one of the best hospitality cities in the nation, if not the world. I want to kind of take a step back, though. I want to go back to your early career, and because working for Hilton is very, very different than working for Nobu. I mean, it's different in every sense of the word. And I'm going to be very intentional in making this statement. One is not better than the other. They're just different. I mean, I get students coming to me a lot and say, "Well, what's the best company to go work for?" And I say, that's highly subjective. I mean, what's the best for you is going to be very different than what's the best for somebody else. If you want to go work for an organization that there is a policy and a procedure for everything about the size of the bathroom and location of the bathroom and what to do and how to greet, then there are companies like that. But if you want to go work for one that maybe empowers you a little bit more and allows you to express your own individuality in the hospitality experience, there are great companies there as well. So you've been very fortunate to experience two very, very different brands. And I kind of want to go back maybe to what got you into the hotel industry to begin with. Like what was the switch that flipped? I mean, listeners of the podcast know what mine was, but we're always interested to hear from others. So what was yours?
Yeah. I think it was interesting, growing up with a unique name like Zoltan, you had to grow up with a little bit of a sense of humor, and I had some fun along the way. I was at the time, I was a teenager, right out of high school, and I was kind of working at a more or less like a minimum wage job. And I was kind of just wanted to try something different and new. But ultimate goal for my career at the time was to be a high school social studies teacher. I'm a big history buff. I love all that fun stuff. And I felt like I was always comfortable kind of taking the lead and kind of teaching people along the way. So my ultimate goal was to kind of just do a couple of years of community college and then transfer down to one of the state universities that specialize in education. So I figured, oh, well, if I got a job at a hotel, and I had some friends that were working at a fairly new Hampton Inn out in the suburbs, and so pretty much the thought process was get a job, work there for a year, and then just do a quick transfer where all my credentials could kind of go over, and I at least have a job when I move out to that state college. And then pretty much what happened was like most hospitality stories is it's a vortex and it sucks you in. And then
it does, it sucks you in. Sometimes it'll spit you out, but sometimes you'll get stuck in it.
Yeah, and chew you up along the way. I know. But I think at the same time I realized, that I really liked the fact that it wasn't, the same thing every day. I talked to different people from all over the world, and this was a little 87 room Hampton Inn, I think I assumed a lot of responsibility. I appreciated the trust that I got from some managers and supervisors, and I think I just carried that over. And it kind of really showed me the way from that point forward.
So you started at the front desk, you started as a bellman, you started, what was so front desk in the rooms?
Front desk, Hampton Inn. And when at that time, and I was a full-time student too. So I was a rare crazy one, full-time student, full-time worker. So it was like averaging like 4 or 5 hours of sleep a day. Cause it'd be school in the morning. I'd work the PM shift at the front desk till 11:30 midnight. Get home, do a little bit of homework, and be like 1:30, and then wake up and do it all over again.
And everyone's got a story like that. I mean, I was still in high school at the time, and I was driving the airport shuttle back and forth to Baltimore Washington Airport. Then I worked my way up to Bellman. It was a 250 room Hilton. I think it's actually converted to an Embassy Suites now, but
oh wow.
And then all of a sudden got into the front desk and I was hooked, and I was like, you know what? I think I might want to do this. And I remember going to my rooms at the time and saying, you know what do I do if I want to do this for a career? And she of course said, you got to go to hotel school.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, we all kind of find that. But what I think people realize very early on is they know they might love hotels, but the question is answered, do you want to go the rooms division route or do you want to go to the food and beverage route?
Right.
And I knew very early on that I didn't want to go the food and beverage route. I liked the room side of things.
Yeah, I agree. And going back to with the Hampton was great because, and that's why I love talking to people from the smaller limited service properties, because that's my roots, and I will always forever be grateful. Because when you're working a PM shift by yourself over there, you're not just front desk; you are literally everything because you're all by yourself.
Sure, so absolutely, you're MOD,
you're running towels up 4 flights of stairs, you're helping with luggage, you're answering phones and making reservations while checking people at the same time. So it really taught you a lot about what you can do with what little you have. And I actually appreciated that. So, and most of my background is in luxury hotels, which my career eventually evolved in. But to your point earlier, I have nothing but appreciation for all the different types. It really does come down to what you want to do personally and all about that location. There's so much that can come to every table, no matter what type of property it is.
Well, and I think, and I've conveyed this to students, and I think Jamie can confirm this, that if I've said this on the podcast before, I would submit that, and people are going to say, well, why should I pay for a college degree in it? Working in a hotel actually at the front desk is not an incredibly difficult job. I actually think that what you really start to learn very quickly is how to deal with lots of different scenarios that will come your way and how to deal with them being cool, calm, and collected.
Mhm.
That being able to critically think through problems is probably one of the best skills you can have and learn at the front desk. By after 2 or 3 weeks or a month working at the front desk, you know how to check somebody in using the PMS system with your eyes closed.
Mhm.
You can reach for a room key, put it in the key machine without even looking. But understanding that different types of guests, in the case of Hilton, a diamond member is going to be very different than a gold member, and there's certain things that go along with that, and being able to solve those problems, that's what you really start to learn. And that's actually something we can't teach you in the
Right.
classroom. There are things that we can teach you in the classroom that you can't learn in the work environment, which is why we always say education does not replace work experience and vice versa.
Oh my gosh.
But when somebody says to me, like, what should I do? Where should I go if I want to kind of get the most basic understanding of hospitality and see how things work? My question is, well, do you want food and beverage or rooms? If they
Mhm.
say rooms, I say, go get a job at the front desk. If
Yeah.
they say food and beverage, I say, go be a server.
Mhm.
And just do that, because you will start to see, the problems. And what's nice is eventually you'll kind of what I call plateau on the problems. Like, I think I've heard every excuse why somebody should get a free upgrade. I think I've heard every excuse why somebody shouldn't have to pay for the movies that are on
Right.
their bill. We've heard them all. But you just start to build up that almost muscle memory, like somebody that, like a golf swing, almost like,
Mhm.
exactly what it's supposed to feel like during a check-in and check-out.
Well, that's why too, they pride so much. A lot of these very, Forbes rated hotels or five diamond hotels. I mean, you hear the common term of anticipatory service for a reason, because it's that muscle memory that's being built. I mean, I tell people all the time, working front desk, and that's most of my career as well, is that, to your point, it's pretty easy. Check-ins and checkouts is the easy part. It's everything else in between that you have to do. And so, when you talk to the team members, you talk to your team or talk to other people that really want to get into it, and they talk about, oh, well, this guest was really upset. And, I don't really look at the what anymore, because obviously they're upset. They're yelling or on the phone or they're at one hotel manager. It's, well, why are they upset? And why didn't we fix this in the first place? Or how can we prevent this from the future? And that's what's really going to help create your career path along the way, is that those problem solving capabilities, the anticipatory services, and you being proactive on that
Mhm.
sense too. So those are the skills that I love about working in the rooms division, is it helps you kind of create those capabilities and the strengths along the way, and then it takes you into those leadership roles.
Mhm. I think what I've also noticed, and I even noticed this, and I left the industry about 12 years ago. Um, I even saw it then, and I can even see it now, just like I've seen an evolution in students. The guests are also very different now.
Oh yeah.
I would imagine that the expectations, and we talk about in our service management classes, we talk about, understanding what the expectations of the guest are and why that's so important. I would imagine that the expectations of the guests that you were interacting with 15, 20 years ago at the Hampton Inn
Mhm.
or even the Waldorf are vastly different than what you're seeing today. And there's lots of reasons for that.
Mhm.
The amount of information that customers have at their disposal to understand every nuance. It's not just like, I want this type of room. I want this exact room and this exact room number, or I want this exact table in the restaurant, because that's what social media and TripAdvisor and Yelp have told me is the best thing to get. And sometimes that's really difficult to do. Whereas before, there was kind of just a general sense of what people wanted. Now it's
Mhm.
hyper specific, and the guest is evolving and changing.
Yeah, I mean, when I first started, I mean, iPhone wasn't even out, so I mean, just that, I mean, so I mean, I was enrolling people into Hilton Honors on paper and sending that out in the mail. I mean,
I
it's
loved it. I would absolutely, where they would have to write, they would also then have to write their frequent flyer number on the
right.
Hilton Honors app, and they would actually pull out the frequent flyer card, like
Exactly.
the
Yeah.
US Airways mileage
You're
number.
looking at AAA cards, you're looking at everything. It was insane. So yeah, to your point, I mean, I will tell you, yeah, the technology advancement definitely has been the biggest probably influence on how the guests are now more than ever before. I mean, so I always use that in the back of my mind because I used to, when I was maybe a front office manager and I have a boss say, yeah, I remember when I was in your role. Well, yeah, I'm sure you did, but you didn't have TripAdvisor, like, and so things like that, I keep them back in my mind so I don't catch myself saying the same thing to my front office team now because I know they have TripAdvisor. I know what
Yeah.
they went through is I had TripAdvisor too. So things like that, I think is important to kind of keep to kind of a level playing field of how to kind of approach your team members as well as the guests too. For some of the sensitivity things. Well, but just this technology has helped the guests. It technically has helped us too. We have a lot
Mhm.
more tools and resources than we ever had before.
Well, I mean, well,
So,
just the data you also have on your guests now and the ability to analyze that data. I mean, I one of the classes I teach is related to casino operations, um, and I always tell the students, I'm like, the amount of data that the average casino has on their customer, just because they're willing to volunteer that information because they think that it correlates to how much they're going to get comped. But every game they play, they're putting in their Players Club card. Every time they check in, that's linked to their Players Club. I mean, I can tell you what somebody likes. I can tell you when they go into their room because it's all electronic. I can tell you how long they stay in that room. I can tell you what TV channels they're watching. I can tell you how long they spend on the internet. I can tell you what kind of phone calls, what kind of movies, what they order in all the different restaurants, what time they traditionally check in, what time they traditionally check out, where they're from geographically. Um, I mean, it's amazing how much data you have, and the really good companies out there are taking that big data and analyzing it and using it to their advantage.
agreed. And that's exactly what you said is exactly what, if you really want to get into that kind of the luxury setting now and all that stuff, that's what the key players do is that it's
Yep.
that investment piece. They invest the time into listening to the guest, into creating those profiles, and then retaining the information. A lot of times we confuse our small talk, whether you're a bellman or front desk or PBX or even at the restaurant side too, bartending or serving or whatever. You're just making small talk, but you're not. What are you doing with that information they're giving you?
Yep.
Are you they told you their kids' names or or their birthday, they're here on their anniversary. Do we ask them, oh, what day is your anniversary? And we can log it into their profile. And then when they come back, maybe that next year, it's around that time. Let's celebrate. Things like that, I think that's what really the hospitality side is all about. It's not just the standard daily practices on your checklist. It's that information that you can really
Yep.
retain and have some fun with.
Yeah. I mean, I've worked at hotels that have 7,000 rooms, and I've worked at hotels that have 90 rooms,
Right.
and um, I've worked at kind of full service mid scale hotels, and I've worked at luxury hotels. And I would say one of the most difficult ones is the small luxury hotel
Oh.
because there's traditionally a higher average daily rate,
Mhm.
but there's also a much higher expectation on the part of the guest. And I mean, I'll never forget my transition into my first management job in a hotel was right out of hotel school. And the boss I had, still to this day, is a mentor of mine. His name was Robert. And Robert told me, he's like, you know what? It's not difficult to do the check-in and the checkout and make the reservation. And this was pre-revenue management systems. We didn't have
Mhm.
STR reports. I mean, we kind of took a dart and threw it at the proverbial board and said, "What's our rate going to be tonight?" But what differentiated us and what actually allowed the property to get the 5-star, 5 diamond was the relationship that we had with the guest. And Robert had this innate ability to just know everything about every kind of guest and knew it wasn't just that, oh, you've got a kid. It's, you know what, you're really into F1 racing, or you're really into luxury cars, or you're really into wine. And he knew that about the guests, and he was able to find things to immediately build a personal connection with somebody. And that made them feel welcomed. And that made them not even blink an eye when it was $450 a night for a room.
Right.
And it was so much easier than when things didn't go right. You had that relationship established. It almost bought you some social capital with the guest.
Oh, absolutely. That's why they come back, is because of you. It's not because of the beds. We all have the same beds. All these hotels, we all serve the same beer.
Here's a secret. You know what? A Hampton Inn hotel room is about the same size as a Four Seasons hotel room.
Exactly. That's a really good point.
They've each got a toilet. They've each got a sink. They've each got a bed. They've each got a credenza. They've each got a window, closet. It's not a secret. There's something different.
So what really is it? So like, that's really comes down to, so like when I talk to like, hospitality students or even new team members, even when I'm interviewing, like I tell them, listen, it really does come down to these smaller details. In order for you to accomplish the big things, you have to understand and execute the small things, and on a consistent basis too. And that's why they keep coming back, is what you're able to do with all that free information that you're able to pull from them. And the fact that you're also showing them you listened, and it means a lot to the world to them. It really does.
Yep. And the good companies out there will not keep that personal information to themselves. I mean, it would always be, let's take the first company I went to right out of college was Pebble Beach Company. We had 3 hotels, all luxury hotels, and we didn't compete with one another. That it was, one day they might stay at the Lodge, but one day they might stay at the Inn at Spanish Bay, and you had to share that information. And the best organizations out there realize that, you know what, you want to keep that customer loyal to the company, that when they go to LA, they have a lot of choices for where to stay. When they go to New York, they have a lot of choices where to stay. What is going to get them to come back to that particular brand? The airlines have mastered this. The hotels have also done a really good job at it, but it's only when they started to be able to share that customer profile information amongst themselves that really create that competitive advantage.
Agreed. I mean, I think that's the stuff too that, our networking now, and relying on our sister properties and just being friendly. Of course, we all love friendly competition and all that fun stuff as well. And looking at numbers, I mean, who doesn't want to win? But at the same time, is this, we're looking at it too, like for Chicago, right? Like we're an ambassador for the city of Chicago as well. We want to bring in that tourism and attraction, and how we're going to do that, how we're going to be able to retain it with, there's going to be hotels for everybody out there. So if we're able to, share information, or if I have a sister property in Los Cabos that has a VIP that stays there on a monthly basis, and he's doing their first trip to Chicago, I'm naturally going to reach out to them and say, hey, listen, what do you know about this person? And like, and what can I do to make them feel like they're in Cabo, but in the city of Chicago, Sure. And it goes a long way. I think it's the effort that really it's the things we're not obliged to do that the customer appreciates the most.
As we kind of pivot and we wrap up our conversation today, I want to focus a little bit on advice you have for the future Zoltans of the world and the future GMs. One of the things that you did, just like I did, is you not only moved around to different brands and different companies, but you also moved around geographically. And this is the thing I think that a lot of people, for some people, it's really exciting. It's, you want to see the world, go work in hospitality and tourism. But some people have this very singular mindset of like, okay, I'm from Chicago. I want to stay in Chicago, and I'm only going to stay in Chicago, and I'm only going to ever be in Chicago. I'm going to live 3 miles from my family for the rest of my life. I'm going to hang out with all the same people I did from high school. I'm going to go to the same bar, and I'm going to, but you really embraced what I say is an attribute that makes you the most appealing candidate when companies are looking to recruit. You had flexibility in where you wanted to go. What was that like, and what advice do you have for people as they kind of shift around to these different, locations? Chicago, very different than Orlando, right. Very different than Palm Springs, very different than Scottsdale. All very different places.
The best thing I can say is definitely do it while you're young. Obviously, if you have the capability, if you have no strings attached. And this is no disrespect to anyone that really wants to, have a family and get married and all that stuff. Please go do it. Live that life. But if you have the opportunity to do it, or do it with someone who is just as flexible as you, explore life, not just professionally, but now personally, and these are chapters that I now can say I have family all around the country. I can go to any of these states or these cities, and I can crash at someone's house, or they'll welcome me over to their hotel or property because of the networks I developed over there. And it's something I'll forever be grateful for. And a lot of it is because, I worked hard and I put my time in, especially those first, year, that first year. But I didn't new property, you're just going to keep grinding away, because that's why I moved there. But it's so important to keep an open mind, because now what's fun is that I can talk to guests from Orlando or Palm Springs or Scottsdale, and I know exactly what they're talking about because I hiked that same mountain, or I went on that same ride in Disney World, or I did like all that stuff.
Or you know how hot it is in Palm Springs, standing out there in a suit.
Exactly. Yeah. Let's talk about July. Let's talk about July in Palm Springs. 120 degrees. I know. And you relate, and I think that's what guests love too. Think about it. If you're a guest and you talk to someone who knows your language, you connected immediately, right? That's how cultures are created.
Yep.
You find a commonality. So if you're able to put yourself and adapt to those individual cultures all around in this beautiful country that we're in, there's so much opportunity in so many cities. I mean, I took what we call the I-10 route. I went I-10 all the way pretty much from Florida to California. But they are all so different. And it's that experience and understanding what Florida clientele is and locals are compared to Southern California clientele and locals are, it really is a world of difference. I mean, I look back and I'm like, I never checked in people from California in Chicago because they had no reason to leave that state. They already had Disney. They have a beach. They have mountains. They have ski lifts. They have everything. Why would you leave California unless it was out here for business?
And it's also not even state specific. It's, working in Palm Springs. Palm Springs is very different than LA.
Oh my gosh.
It's very different than Riverside.
Right.
So you can't make the assumption that even though they're 30 miles away or in LA traffic 5 hours,
exactly.
You can't make the assumption that they're the exact same. They're totally different. So it's great advice. Final question is you and I are very similar in the sense that we went to hospitality school, and a lot of the people that are listening to this podcast are current students or are thinking about getting into hospitality school. And as I said earlier, work experience doesn't replace education and vice versa. What did you get out of your hospitality education experience that really helped you become the successful hotelier that you are today?
The secret to getting ahead is getting started. So to your point, the experience is essential. Like, anyone that, get a job right now is the best thing I can tell people anywhere.
Yes. Get a job.
Get
a job. Even if you're going to school, get a job.
Yeah. If you can only work 3 days a week, work 3 days a week. But honestly, if you're able to get that full time going and get a consistent schedule and, you can make some sacrifices, that's the best thing to do. And so when I was in hospitality school, the networking side and just listening to the professors with their experience and their networks, the guest speakers and all that, it really was interesting. And I actually do remember a lot of those moments when we were in an auditorium or anything like that. And you look back to see that's how those companies were run then, or, what made them so successful. And, it helped a lot too that I was very fortunate to make a lot of good friends along the way that we still very much keep in touch to this day. And I just ran into 2 of them who I was in school with 10 plus years ago, 12 years ago. And it's great to see. And they're still doing a lot of industry things as well. So I think for me as a general manager, if I look at a resume and I see 2 matching resumes, one with an education of hospitality and one no, I'm naturally going to assume that the person that invested their education into the industry is going to be, something to look at least as far as, a consideration for the position, because they invested their education into it as an investment. And what we look for, at least in the luxury world, is that investment of quality, right? And so if you invested your education into it, ideally we're thinking that you're going to be investing now into your job, into your career. And that's who we want. We want people for the long haul. I want to organically grow those people. So that's what kind of the hospitality school kind of showed me, was that those people that really did put most of the people that put their education into it, they stuck with the business for a long time, and it's been proven to that point, which is nice.
And I will just add, you don't have to have a degree to get your foot in the door, but
No way.
there's going to be a point. I mean, I started when I was still in high school. You started when you were still
18,
young as well.
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, there are plenty of opportunities for you to do now, i.e. the front desk, being a host in a restaurant, driving the airport shuttle, which I still think to this day was one of the best jobs I ever had. I mean, I absolutely loved driving the airport shuttle. But there's plenty of opportunities that you can have without having that degree. But if you want to get up into those upper echelons of leadership and into that GM role or corporate role, having that degree can always be helpful. So,
yeah.
Well, Zoltan, this was, I always love talking to people that work in the hotel industry and have kind of worked their way up. You are the general manager of the Nobu Hotel, one of the coolest, hippest new hotels in the city of Chicago, located right in the heart of the West Loop. I can't thank you enough for taking time out of your busy day. I know you're at work in your office. So I appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to be a guest on the Hospitality Spirit.
No, thanks again, Dr. Nick. This is great. Anytime I can help you guys out here, but best of luck with this, and the future hospitality students as well. Doors are always open. It's a business that'll never go away, and
you're hiring. So
exactly,
if you're
hiring.
interested in jobs, go check out the website. They're looking for jobs. So
thank you.
But thanks a lot, Zoltan. I appreciate it.
All right.